Hi, Dan Paulson here. I've made an extensive study of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and I've located it. I can find that all over the place now. I have just absolutely focused in on it. People who study or are aware of, or at least have some knowledge of things outside of their own religious belief. As you look in the world, there's a lot of people that have looked enough to realize, boy, there's a lot of similarities. What are these guys doing? It's the template. It's the template. People that are fighting and squabbling over who was first, the template was first. The template was first. That's what they're all built on. And the template itself is based on the path an individual would take to self-heal when they get to a point in life where they want to change their life and look back on things. The template picks up right there. Tells you how you came about, how you came into being. All of the story of that template plays out in the psyche. Then they take that template and say, here, build something on that. Find a way to create a story that has people carrying this lesson inside. So wonderful stories are built that carries this template, and the template has to be figured out. It's a puzzle. It is a puzzle. The template doesn't change, but what it is carried in, it changes. The Enuma Elish is actually, I recognize it as the prototype. That and Gilgamesh were prototypes for this template that was continuing to emerge. And it's going to show up in all of antiquity, including the book of Genesis. It just uses different analogs, but it's framed on the same template. And that is why we see the similarities. That's what I'm working on, and I want to get people to see that. The template is there. It doesn't change. The stories all change, which means the analogous manner in which they are carrying the outward-looking lessons that still play out in the psyche all change. So as you move from place to place, that's the trick of it. Learning the analogs, knowing that the template is there, that it's a different teaching, a different time, a different people, that this is being done mentally, and that there's a lot of complex layers to it. I think it can take a little while to see it as it gets more complicated. The easier stuff is kind of, it's easy to interpret. This stuff takes a little bit longer. It's thick. There's a lot of layers. I'll put links to the beginning of the first of these series. This is actually a sequential series, and if you're interested in it, it's going to take a while. It is not going to be a fast thing. This is back when they were making these stories and playing them out and learning them and living them, they had time. They had time, and that time is necessary to build and to decode these stories. And if you don't use the time, it won't work. I like to create analogies because it helps you see things. It would be like your youngster, as you're teaching them to drive, you get out, get in the car the first time, you start teaching them, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, they're like, "Oh, why is this taking so long?" There's a lot to it, yeah. And there's certain people, I think, that have some sort of mental structure that are going to see this, and others that will never see it. If you're interested in what I'm doing here, again, the Enuma Elish is old. It has a lot of layers to it. It has a lot of thickness to it, but this can be taught in easier places that are much more condensed. I won't post links, but if you were interested, you could go through my playlist and find where I've done comparisons between Buddha, Lao Tzu, and Jesus. Those three right there, and I'll show you how they're all teaching the same thing in different analogs. I can also say that just from my own extreme repetition, I always went through playing these out in my mind, never allowing supernatural to be a component part of the story, that it always had to play out. And eventually what emerges is that there are interactive steps. The difficult part people have, and I had a lot of trouble with this. Boy, did I struggle. And I know now we can jump right past it. As we're reading these, you go, okay, this plays out in the psyche. I don't know about this other stuff. It must be the world here. Every bit of it plays out in the psyche. The things that don't sound like they transition, it's an analog we haven't figured out yet. It all plays out in the psyche unless it is telling you that as you're turning into heal and as you're changing and as you're moving from place to place in life, the people around you might not be happy with you, things like that. It'll teach you things like that as well. That actually comes from Jesus. It doesn't come from the Enuma Elish. There was an evolution where more information, as time goes on, you can see more things are being added to this. Okay, what I want to do, though, is get back into the Enuma Elish. We've done tablets 1 plus a supplement. Those are good. I would hear that, the supplement especially. 2 was done where I talked about treating this like a big comic book, that it all plays out inside, that there's a lot of pieces and parts, that all of these names of people in here represent parts of our psyche, parts of what we're holding inside of us at various times in our life. They've given names to what is happening up here to teach people to carry that story. And yeah, this is their media. Okay, let's jump into, one of the things that's happening, we're going to see repetitions of stories. In myth later on, we're going to see things like where there's a repeated action happening. There might be, like in Jesus' work, a tree that grows up, you chop it down, it grows up, you chop it down until you pull it out by the root. In Greek myth, you might have a boulder being rolled up a hill, coming down, rolled up a hill, coming down, a liver being eaten out, growing back, a wheel circling in Buddhism, Taoism. There's a variety of ways where they're using analogs to show something that is repeating over and over again. And then what happens afterwards, after that repeat happens, there will be a teaching on how to interrupt that cyclical thing. And that teaching very specifically refers to the things inside of us that continue to trigger, that continue to come out, that confuse us, that cause our lives to be the way they are, that we are products of our past, and that we need to extract ourselves from that. And that the repeated cycles are meant to show us that. If you're acting out or doing something and it quits, yay. But what happens later? It builds up, gets triggered again, boom, it happens. This is something that is happening cyclically. And they're teaching us that. In the Enuma Elish, they hadn't quite developed that technique yet. So what they're doing is repeating chunks of the story that are like when the evil is acting out, they're doing that. We'll see that emerge here. So there's some pattern repetition in here that is purposeful. It is showing that repetition of things that are acting out. We stand back and look at it. We will see those elements emerge from the story. Okay, let's go ahead then and start on the tablet 3. Then Anshar raised his voice to be heard to his officer Kaka. Hear me, Kaka, my trusted officer who I can depend upon. I am sending you on a journey to go to Lamu and Lahamu, for you are good at ascertaining, a superlative communicator, so that the gods who are my fathers will gather here to me, so that all of the gods will be assembled here in my presence, that we might have a discussion. Gather them for a feast. I'm going to stop right there, and let's spend a little time talking about these names and these parts again. This is the most complicated part right here. This is the part that is going to help us understand the stories. And if you watch the videos in a flow from one to the other, probably this will stay more familiar in your mind, or just go through it. Really, you have to repetitively go through these over and over again until they make some kind of sense. You can't just read them once and say, I'm done with that book. There's something in here that's a puzzle. So Anshar is us. Kaka, there's a part of us. All of these are part of us. We got Lamu and Lahamu, and we look at that and go, wait a minute, how does that play out in the psyche? I don't get that. So here's what they're doing. First of all, here are the components that are identified. In the simplest teachings, there are 5 parts. 5 parts. The consciousness, the subconscious. The subconscious, however, they're identifying a couple of things. The subconscious is a location in our mind that is this nebulous place. What goes into the subconscious is what causes our life to act out the way it is. So we got a conscious that decides the quality of what goes into the subconscious. So the conscious decides what goes in. The subconscious is what holds it. What is in there are the decisions that we've made, the choices, what we've judged, what we've named, what we've classified, our experience. I like that, I don't like that. I want this, I don't want that. That becomes who and what we are. Those are in there. And that there is a higher self. A higher self is that part of us that we can look at ourselves from and go, yeah, I see what happened. I got to straighten this out. I got to quit doing that. But then you don't pay attention. You get caught up again and you can step back out of it. We're looking to find that and be this higher self and constantly be this higher self and not keep transitioning back and forth. When we start out, we don't even know that that higher self is there. We're just operating in the conscious and what is in our subconscious. And that dictates the flow of our life, which is 5, the field that we exist within, that we all function within that field. So you got conscious, subconscious, higher self, the characteristics that are inside that need to be cleaned out, and how your life unfolds. Boom, that's the simplest. Then you take something like the story right here, leave that in place, intact, and add to it. So now all of these names, you go, where did they come from if they all play out inside of there? But if you look and you go through and you sequence it, what you realize is that, there's a source to begin with. Tiamat is what's holding it. That is us. That is source. There's people having offspring in this Lamu and Lahamu. That is actually us. That is our conscious and our subconscious before we were getting full of stuff. Kaka, what they're calling for here is a part of you that reasonably can go back and look at that and go, okay, yeah, well, that's what we're doing right now. We're kind of like using a different part of us, a reasoning part. You know, our higher self is interacting with another part, which is interacting with another part. Those are perhaps not really happening. It's a much more simple process in our minds. But what they do to build this story is to say, okay, well, here is your conscious at this time in your life. We're going to call it this. Later on, when you become this, we're going to give it a different name. You know, when you're young, you're one thing. Before you're aware, as you're acting out, you become something different. As you are, asleep, you're something different. The characteristics that are in you, it's not just good and bad anymore. It could be like, well, let's see, we got a bunch of bad things in there, and then they give them names, and it could be names that mean something like shame, hurt, lust, things that are sinful sort of things. And they start giving those names to richen the story. Instead of just saying good and bad, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of bad. Let's give it a bunch of names. And then that is what acts out. But later on, you're going to go back and interact with that and change what that is. So these are going to cease being called that, and they're going to be called something different. And we're not there yet, but I'll let you know that when we do get there and it's time to go back and do battle, there's not only a bunch of things named that are acting out, but there's going to be a bunch of things named that are going to go do the battle. And those are going to represent things like balance, changing frequencies, changing the state of something from one to another, forgiveness, letting things go. All of those are going to be how that shows up. Okay, repetition for familiarity. Let's look at that again. Then Anshar raised his voice to be heard to his officer Kaka. Hear me, Kaka, my trusted officer who I can depend upon. I am sending you on a journey to go to Lamu and Lahamu. Okay, so this is the part of us, Anshar. We are now talking to another part of ourself who we can rely and trust, we depend upon. We need some dependable, trusted component part of us to go back and address our earliest self, our Lamu and Lahamu, before we started picking up the bad characteristics, the gods that came about later, came about after Lamu and Lahamu. Does that sound familiar? We should be pulling things from other parts of our memory at this point. Blessed is he who came into being before he came into being. To enter the kingdom of heaven within, do so as a child. Lamu and Lahamu. We are now going after to become that. And in case you don't know, those were attributed to Jesus, those two comments there in the Gospel of Thomas and in the canonical Gospels. People say they can find similarities between this and Genesis. I'm telling you, that template's there. You are good at ascertaining a superlative communicator so that the gods who are my fathers will gather here to me. So Anshar is a product of things that are going on. The gods are the fathers. Anshar wants his past changed. The gods are the bad things. He wants to deal with them. He wants to come and talk to the issues that have come from his past. He wants to go back and face the pain and the fear. And he's using Kaka with communications, good at ascertaining, figuring out what's going on to go back and do it so that all the gods will be assembled here. Then we have a discussion. We're going to go gather them for a feast and give them plenty of bread to eat and the rest of the wine. Then after have them declare a destiny for Marduk, the hero. Okay, what's happening here then? We are reasoning with ourselves that we want to go to our past. We want to assemble the gods. We want to get the bad. We want to get all of our bad characteristics. We want to sit down and reason with ourselves. Give them bread to eat and the best of the wine. We're trying to entice our past self to come and join us and bring them about. Place yourself before them and convey to them everything now that I will relate to you. So that's what's happening right here. Yeah, we are reasoning with our early self to stop doing and to stop being that way. I quit. I'm not going to do that. I will not do that. Ask them to declare a destiny for Marduk, the hero. That means you're telling your old self to relinquish its power to our new self. We say, I quit. Stop doing that. The drugs, the alcohol, the hate, the anger, the shame, the pain, the drive. I'm done. Guys, let's be friends. Think about that feast story inviting guests elsewhere. Ones that don't show up, you're going to find the analogs are going to become something. Once you start picking them out, you're going to be seeing the similarities. Once you read them for what they're doing in the psyche and not for what the words are saying. Okay, I want to read it one more time, and let's take a look at it, remembering that we are every person, every name, everything in here, all the nouns are parts of us at one time or another, or now. Then Anshar raised his voice to be heard to his officer Kaka. Hear me, Kaka, my trusted officer who I can depend upon. I am sending you on a journey to go to Lamu and Lahamu, for you are good at ascertaining, a superlative communicator, so that the gods who are my fathers will gather here to me, so that all of the gods will be assembled here in my presence, that we might then have a discussion, gather them for a feast, and give them plenty of bread to eat and the best of the wine, then after have them declare a destiny for Marduk, the hero. So you must go soon, Kaka, and place yourself before them, and convey to them everything that I will now relate to you. We're sitting down to have a reasoning with ourselves. We need to resolve those issues that we can't resolve, the things that keep coming after us, the stuff that repeats, the cycles that come after us, the gods that act out, and when they act out, they are in charge. That is why they are called gods. We need to reason with them and work with them, and we're sending our best mental skills to do this. Yeah, we're just reasoning with ourselves at this point. I think if you're hooked into what I'm doing, and if you're able to play out the story in your psyche at this point, at least marginally, we'll keep moving ahead. And I'm going to keep going anyway. But if that's not happening for you, it's going to be crazy. It's a lot of parts that when you honestly, gosh, when you dissect it down, I've said it before, it's when you pull out the template, these big, huge, crazy, fantastical stories become scary simple. Very scary simple. Okay, so it jumps right into then. We'll get into it. We are, again, this is, we're going back to our earliest self. We're going back to that part of us before we were hurt, and that's who we're addressing, and we're telling our earliest self what is going on. Your son Anshar is the one who sent me to speak to you, and he asked me to convey his own inner thoughts, saying, okay, so what does that make Anshar? Anshar is the hurt self. That is us who is hurt that wants to go get help. Yeah, we are offspring of our earlier self, and now we're asking newer selves to go back and please interface with our unhurt self. Behold, Tiamat, that's our soul, who gave all birth, is determined to destroy us. She called together a congress and is like a deranged maniac, and the gods have all gone over to her side. Every one of them, even those which you gave rise to, have also joined her force. They have gathered around Tiamat and championed her cause. They were brutal and planned endlessly, both day and night, grumbling and fuming, all done in the cause of making war. They called together a council of war to consider battle plans. Lady Huber, who made all, produced... Well, let's get back to that in a minute. Let's talk over this first section to begin with. Okay, we did that first line. Your son Anshar, yes, that is our current self that's like, I'm at wit's end, I need help. We go back and reason with ourselves. Tiamat gave birth to everything. That is where everything emerged from. The soul, the inner part, the energy that we are, the subconscious mind, if we want to interact with it. Called together Congress and is like a deranged maniac. Yeah, this is where we have all of these parts in us that are not resolved yet, and it comes out. All the gods have gone over to her side. Every one of them, even the ones you gave rise to, have also joined her force. So that means not only does she have bad gods that she's picked up along the way through life experiences as those waves mix, giving birth to things, but there were earlier gods that were given birth to by our earliest self, and that would have been our joy, our happiness, our things like that would have been things that we gave birth to that no longer are there now. They have gone over and joined. Everything is so bad that even our joy is not there anymore. They were brutal and planned endlessly, both day and night, grumbling and fuming, all done in the cause of making war. Yeah, this is going on and just saying this is what's happening. It's a big, very rich, comic, adventure way of telling that inner story. Lady Huber, that's the part of us that whatever it is that creates all the acting out stuff, where does that come from? We just give that a different name because, you know why? We have to get rid of Lady Huber, but we can't get rid of Tiamat. We have to give Lady Huber a different name. She's going to go away later. So, you see how they build the story? This is just, oh my God, it blows my mind. Okay, where we left off, Lady Huber, who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. Their bodies she had infused with poison rather than blood, and she caused these raging dragons to emit deadly beams and to wear mantles of brilliance so that they were like gods. Then the Lady Huber raised her voice, verbalizing the curse. Anyone who gazes at them will be stricken down with horror. They will always raise up their bodies and never back down. Then Tiamat enlisted a horned snake, a Mashusu dragon, a Lamu hero, an Ugalu devil, a mad dog, and scorpion man. Brutal Umu devils, a half-man, half-fish, and a half-man, half-bull, carrying ruthless weaponry and who reveal no fear in battle. Her commands were so portentous that none could be ignored. In addition to these, she recruited 11 more likewise. Okay, if you've been going through these sequentially, you will really recognize that this is verbiage that is repeated. The only difference is the first time it was conveyed as if it happened the first time, and in this case, it's being repeated. However, it's being conveyed from a new part of yourself to an old part of yourself. So the cycle is repeating without it just blatantly repeating. So it looks like there is a cohesive flow in there. If it just repeated without any reason, it might look strange. But in this case, since it happened once and now it's being conveyed once, but they're conveying it word for word, it's showing the repeat. And if you go through here and look at it, there's probably things of with poison rather than blood infused. Dragons to emit deadly beams. I don't know. Those are probably all relative to something that people are doing at that point in time that are not okay in the culture. They're doing things that are not acting out. And these creatures, all of that stuff is going to be. There's a Lamu hero in there. Isn't Lamu and Lahamu what we're going after? There are layers in here still that come from the rest of their culture that is not included in here. They're telling stories that. Think of Greek mythologies and the gods, that they continue to emerge, that a god becomes something, and no matter what story he goes into, that god remains with that set of characteristics. That's how they're building their network of stories. This is ahead of that. Yeah, precursor. This is going to sound goofy, but this is exactly it. Think of it this way. If you're in the United States and you've watched sitcoms these are old, they're out of syndication. You ever see Cheers? And a character named Frasier emerges, and then later Frasier goes on to have his entire new show. Think of that forever, just going on and on and on. Stories building off of stories and characters moving from place to place. Sometimes going, not always. Some characters remain, some characters move on. And right here, we've only got one series. So there's more going on in their culture that are not a part of this right here. And all I'm going to suggest is that as much as they're building those up rich, that if you think about it, you could say, the things that I need to take care of inside of me is where I got hurt, where I'm ashamed, where I need to forgive, where I need to stop being needy, where I need to stop thinking about. You can name all of that stuff if you want to. And that's kind of what they're doing. They're taking big things and giving them names that are some kind of creature that's their boogeyman, etc. And you could also, however, say, You could pull the story instead of push it. You could go on the other side and say, I want to be happy. And what is it? What do I need to get rid of? Anything that interferes with that. So you can make that a very complicated way to tell the story or a very simple way to tell the story. They're just doing it in a very complicated way because It's fun. Okay, let's get back to it and remember where we are is that we have Kaka, that part of ourselves that is being our emissary, going back and talking to our earlier self and conveying, here's what has happened. Here's what is going on. And it picks back up bottom two lines here. And above all of her children, of the gods who had assembled, she conferred upon Kingu, the chief rank among them all, and placed him to be seated upon the throne of rule, saying, I have conjured a spell in your name, making you foremost among the gods of Congress. You now rule all of the gods. You will reign supreme, for further you will be my soulmate. Your orders shall not be disregarded among the Anuki. Okay, do you remember Kingu from Tablet 2? Kingu is who we are in our sleeping state. When we're grown, when we're angry, when we're at our worst. Kingu is in charge. Kingu is who we are before we've woken up and said, oh my gosh, it's me and not something else. Yep, that's it. And that is who is in charge, and that is what is happening, and that is what is acting out. And using this very same analogy today, I think we could probably say that many people on the planet live their entire lives in their Kingu mode, that they never get out of that. Yeah, that's it, period. However, as we move along, we see she conveyed to him the tablet of fate, clasping it at his chest. What you say will not be altered, and you will speak the law. Think back on our own lives. There's a point where we have no idea. That part of us is in charge no matter what. We could be completely wrong, but we are the ones in charge. We've got the tablet of fate. Anu power. The power of creation. We create our life. And had pronounced the fates of his sons the gods. He said, what comes out of your lips would obliterate flames. So in this section, I don't see anything new other than that repeat is finishing up right here. And it's repeating that at some point in time, you are living a life that it is something that you become aware of one day, you don't like, you don't want, but there's a part of you that was back there that didn't see that, and these are going to have to go battle each other. But that's future coming up. Right now, they're just talking about what the issue is, how we came about. This is our life right now. We belong to this story. The last two lines at the bottom, I sent forth Anu, but he was not able to stand up to her, while Nudimmud was panic-stricken and merrily came back. And again, going to try to deal with it, it doesn't work. And the Nudimmud, that is one that appears that you look at that and go, where did this person come from? But this is their role in here. This individual, Nudimmud, panic-stricken and merrily came back, is going to represent the part of us that doesn't make it, that chickens out, that fails. I'm going to make it. I failed. I didn't make it. That's our Nudimmud right there. I did it again. Yep, Nudimmud. We need something stronger than Nudimmud. All right, continuing on the tablet. Until Marduk, your son, most capable of the gods, emerged, and he wished of his own accord to stand against Tiamat. He raised his voice to be heard and spoke these words to me. If I am to be your defender and defeat Tiamat to preserve you, then assemble a commission and proclaim a singular destiny. Then rest content among the others within the council chambers, for my own words rather than yours will determine destiny. Whatever I accomplish will not be undone, never overturned, and the verdict that issues from my lips never be rescinded. So act in haste and declare a destiny for him with all speed, that he might then go and confront your overwhelming foe. Okay, remembering now Marduk is the individual that is coming out. This is going to be our savior self. This is the part of us that is going to emerge with knowledge. This is the one that's going to say, I'm done. I'm finished. No more games. We're going in. I've got it. Marduk, your son, most capable of the gods, emerged, and he wished of his own accord to stand against Tiamat. Elements that we always see, like until Marduk, your son. We know that Marduk is offspring then downstream. There's lineage happening in here in these stories all the time. Creation stories have lineage. If I'm going to be your defender, defeat Tiamat to preserve you, proclaim a singular destiny. What do you want? Clean it all out. You've got to make sure you have a clear mind. And what is our destiny? The singular destiny. Typically, in all teachings, it's poor in spirit, emptiness, being purged, having your eye cleared out, your third eye, all that which is indicating clearing out your mind. And the upshu ikanaku, you can see that I can't pronounce it right even. It's a foreign word, but I looked it up and I know what it means, council chambers, so we just go there. The names, I don't know, I want to leave those in place. Anytime I can define a word like that, I'll just go ahead and do that. And yeah, this is just saying I'll take over. When I get done, it'll all be taken care of. When the verdict, the issues from my lips will never be rescinded. This is a promise that once I get this taken care of, it won't go back the way it was again. If we move on. And Lamu and Lahamu heard every word and cried out, and every one of the Ijiji were overcome with sad moaning. But this is awful, for before Anshar sent us this intelligence, we had not the least idea of what Tiamat was planning to do. They made their way and gathered the high gods who fix fate, and they came into Anshar's company, being at once cheerful. Greeting one another with kisses, and there in the meeting hall they discussed amongst themselves, sitting together for a feast. And they ate plenty of bread and imbibed the best of the wine, so that they slurped up flavorful beer through drinking straws and were made full through the consumption of the alcohol. As a result of this, they became cheerful, their hearts rejoiced, and then they pronounced a destiny for Marduk, their hero. And that actually ends this tablet. But let's talk about it. So Lamu and Lahamu heard every word and cried out. This is our early self, remember? We are, yay, please, yes. Oh my gosh, could you do something? Somebody, please, somewhere. And every one of the Iji were overcome with sad moaning. Still haven't figured out who the Ijiji are, but it's starting to look like sad moaning. And every one of the Ijiji were overcome with sad moaning. If the Ijiji are there with Lamu and Lahamu, sadness, these may be the emotions, the feelings, that all of the feelings that we have, the Ijiji might be an analog for our emotions. We're overcome with sad moanings. Oh yeah, we have to deal with this stuff. Oh no, I don't want to do that. But this is awful. For before Anshar sent us this intelligence, we don't know what's going on. It just acts out at any point in time. We're going to go gather gods who fix the fates, greeting one another with kisses. They're in the meeting hall. The meeting hall is up here. This is just the fun story indicating that we're gathering up what we need to do. We're looking at it. We're realizing we've got some issues to deal with. There's some sadness that's going to happen. All that stuff that I didn't want to deal with, I'm going to have to go deal with it. All of that is emerging right here. Then they ate plenty of bread and imbibed the best of the wine. Bread and wine. Eating bread and drinking wine. Ooh, analogs. Keep making connections. And they ate plenty of bread and imbibed the wine, so that they slurped up flavorful beer through drinking straws, were made full through the consumption of alcohol. They became cheerful, their hearts rejoiced. So in this case, alcohol is not being treated like something bad. In their culture, it's probably like, yay, alcohol, wine, and beer, It wasn't like we have today. It's probably part of their diet, and it was just a natural, normal thing. We have a lot of hang-ups with it. But back in this time, I'm reading this, and it's like, yeah, we are rejoicing. We got a game plan. We're getting ready to go back in. I know what to do. I got it figured out. I know where I came from. I know what's emerging. I know that my subconscious has things in it that are acting out. They're gods. I don't have any control over them. I can't shut them down. They keep acting out. I go back, and they keep acting out. That repeat is happening, and now we're creating the necessary mindset. We've come to the point. This is it. We're at a point in time where we are now turning around. This is where we come into the material kind of, and then we read it and go, oh, I see everything, how we came about. Now from here, where does it happen? I know the video was a little shorter, but I think we're moving along pretty good. It's a shorter tablet too. I don't think I'll add the next one to it though. I think I will keep them separated. And, oh gosh, let me think. I'm going to pause and just wait and see if I can think of anything that I need to include with this one before. I guess I want to say one thing. It's a theory. Lineage. Biblical lineage is huge. There's these monstrous lineage things that are looked at in people. If everything plays out in the psyche, it means something different. And looking here, it's a very small lineage, but it looks like just one thing comes from another thing, comes from another thing. And I think in Jewish literature, it's going to emerge, the lineage is going to appear in the same sequence of the teaching. except that it's just a huge lineage. So what are they doing? How many parts are they creating? Instead of fear, shame, pain, now you got, oh, fear, shame, pain, I'm a worthless piece of crap, I hate this, I steal, I do. I don't know. But my head's going that way because that's the pattern. That's the pattern. That's what keeps emerging. I'm still looking at it. Okay, I think that's it for this video. And Tablet 4 will be next. And I'll see you then. Love one another.